Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we are going over The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, continuing along our journey, talking about Chapter 7, The Failure is the Way Forward. And if you guys remember last time, talking about Chapter 6, on how you're wrong about everything, but so am I. And the main gist of this chapter was the fact that your goal in life should not be just to be right all the time, 100% correct all the time, and your way is the highway. You should actually be trying to be less wrong over time. And the point of that is that you are constantly learning, because the things that you do now might have to be adjusted in the future when you take in more data. So it's making you be more open to the fact that there might be new ways or better ways of doing things in the future. But if you just think that, oh, I'm 100% right about everything, it doesn't leave any room for growth. So that's why Mark in that chapter was saying, hey, just be less wrong about things. Like, this is how it goes right now, but thoughts and things might change in the future. So you got to kind of be able to adapt with that and be humble enough to realize that, hey, you're going to be wrong about pretty much everything. But so is everybody else. So I thought cool chapter today, Failure is the Way Forward. Let's kick things off. So, how do you define failure? And this is a big thing with everybody. There's a quote out there saying that if it's something to do with the fish. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll go its whole life thinking that it's a failure. So failure is very subjective, says Mark. It's a relative concept. Somebody's failure could be somebody else's success. We take it from a weightlifting standpoint. I bench 225 and I have somebody else bench 225. I could see it as a failure, and my training partner could see it as a success. But it's the same weight. It's just mentally how we see it, because maybe I think that, oh gosh, I was expecting myself to do way more than this. You know, I've been working, I've been doing tons of push-ups, doing tons of reps on the bench press. I feel like I should be able to do more than this. So it feels like a disappointment to me, whereas for maybe my training partner, they had, no aspirations of benching a ton. And all of a sudden they do it, and then it's like, hey, so I'll take it. That's kind of their mentality. So Mark, that's what kind of Mark is saying here. Failure is super, super relative to that particular person. And Mark had his journey through life, where he talks about in this beginning section how, okay, yeah, he went to college, he graduated during the Great Recession, tough job economy, and he wanted to just go into entrepreneurship, working for himself. So he didn't want to go working for himself for the money, but he valued other things. He valued freedom, he valued autonomy. And he just asked himself some simple questions. Would I rather make decent money and work a job I hated, or play an internet entrepreneur and be broke for a while? And he says the answer was pretty immediate. Pretty immediate in that moment. The failure and success paradox. So, the thing about success, and I remember there's a jiu-jitsu guy, Gordon Ryan, he has a quote, or he's talked about how he has trained so much that he's been in the worst positions more than anybody else, and that's why he's so successful, because He's been in those very, very shitty spots, bottom side control with somebody on his back, mounted, that he's had just so much more practice than everybody. And that's the failure and success paradox here. Mark states if someone is better than you at something, they have likely failed at it way more than you have. But that's why they succeed. It's kind of like the Michael Jordan quote we talked about in the previous chapter. Michael Jordan missed thousands of shots over the course of his career. He lost however many games, and yet he still won 6 championships because you had to learn from the mistakes to then make adjustments to then be successful later on. Conversely, if someone is worse than you at something, they haven't gone through all the pain yet for that particular thing that they're pursuing. And that's the problem is, especially in today's society, and Mark touches on this in this chapter, avoiding failure is essentially avoiding success. This is very prevalent, especially with my generation I can speak to, and maybe even this newer generation, Gen Z. But for millennials, yes, the snowflake generation. We were told, hey, you're going to be great. We were watched over a ton like hawks, lots of helicopter parents, and parents wanting to raise us without experiencing the failure because they wanted to protect us from that. But in the end, that's not the greatest thing. You need those failures to learn what it is like to succeed. Whether that's the motivation to I never want this bad taste in my mouth, or whether that's, okay, I did this one thing and it didn't work, so I'm going to try a slightly different thing and see how that works. And it's like we talked about in chapter 6, just being slightly less wrong every single time. But yeah, like Mark says, if you're unwilling to fail, you're unwilling to succeed. You're unwilling to succeed. And this failure thing is really, like we said in the last slide, it's relative. And it's how you measure it. So if your metrics are off in how you measure the failure, then your whole mindset is going to be, it can be frustrating. It's going to be just overall potentially a negative experience if you measure the failure in a not so healthy way. Mark says here that the metrics that you use to measure success, failure, and such should be so that they have a long-lasting impact. In other words, your metrics shouldn't be something that's, I guess, external. Your metrics shouldn't be, oh, I'm a success or failure if I make this amount of money. This is the best way to put it, guys. If your metrics, in this example, your metrics shouldn't be, I want to make this amount of money. Because once you obtain that bar, that threshold, then it's going to be like you have nothing else to work for. So he gives an example of Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso's goal would have been to, I want to be the best creative mind in the world. Or let me get for you guys the exact. The reason for Picasso's success is exactly the same reason why, as an old man, he was happy to scribble drawings on a napkin alone in a cafe. His underlying value was simple and humble, and it was endless. It was the value, honest expression. So that was his goal, honest expression. It wasn't to make a lot of money. Because again, like that bullet point says, you have nothing left to achieve once you attain that thing. So the metrics that you measure success and failure should be long lasting. It shouldn't be, I want to pass for 30,000 yards in my career. Okay, I mean, that's a good and respectable goal, but I want to have a career where I help my team and teammates be better versions of themselves. Now, that's a very long lasting goal that impacts you outside of your football career, just as an example. And in that process, pain is part of that process. So there's this paradox between success and failure. You need the failure to get the success. But failure is going to come with a lot of pain, but pain is just part of that process. And Mark talks about that there was this Polish psychologist, Kazimierz Dabrowski, who studied survivors in World War II in Poland during World War II who were in Poland during World War II. And he discovered that this wartime tragedy made people actually happier. It made them happier because after the war, when little petty life annoyances came up in the process of their lives, not in the process, but in their lives, that they were not unfazed by it. They didn't care about the little things anymore because of the fact that they went through this grand, horrible thing in World War II. So they could get through the little things like, oh, I stubbed my toe. Or, the weather sucks today. Because that doesn't compare to what they went through during World War II. Next, and this is a passage from the book, Dabrowski argued that fear and anxiety and sadness are not necessarily always undesirable or unhelpful states of mind, but rather they are often representative of the necessary pain of psychological growth. So all that to say, pain is part of the process. You need the motivation to actually apply things to make your life better. So you need the pain there to serve as motivation to make micro adjustments in your life, to be less wrong, and to then change your life for the better. And pain, again, pain is part of that process. One thing to do when you are experiencing pain is to try not to let the emotions from that pain define the reality that you are in. And Mark says here, don't let your emotions define your reality. Don't separate what you feel from what actually is in the situation. So he uses an example of people, you can be sad. You can think that people don't want to talk to you because you are feeling sad or angry in the moment, but separate out the sad and anger from what actually is happening out in the world. And it's not that people don't want to talk to you, it's just people are super, super busy, or you just haven't found the right person to talk to who's open to a conversation. Right? So it's just to know that pain is part of the process. You need it to serve as a motivation to make changes in your life. But this whole thing is a process. Even when things are great, there's still going to be things that you could change because, again, if we're taking the concept of being less wrong and nobody knows what we're doing, nobody knows what they're doing. I shouldn't say nobody, but even when things are going great, there's still things that can be adjusted. Even in the victories, there's still some things you did wrong. Nothing was like 100% like a complete game. Even in baseball, when you have a complete game, you're still walking some people, most of the time. You still give up some hits. I mean, okay, yeah, there's the perfect game. 27 up, 27 down, but yeah, you might walk some batters in that game. You're not going to just straight 27 strikes, the whole game. You know what I'm saying? Or would it be 27 strikes? No, 3 strikes for every player. Maybe it would be more. I can't do math, guys. But anyway, that's really the gist. Pain is part of that process. So, how do you make these changes in your life? Okay, let's say you do have the failures. You do have the things that you need to do to be less wrong. What do you do? And this is where Mark's math teacher comes in. And Mark's math teacher once told him a while back that, hey, okay, if you're stuck on a problem, to just work on it. Because a simple act of just doing will cause the right ideas to show up. And I think we have it backwards. Mark kind of says how we have it kind of backwards in society where we look for motivation first before we start on a problem or before we start working on something. But it's not really like that. Action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's the cause of it, is what Mark states. So we tend to think that, okay, I need emotional inspiration, which is going to motivate me, which is then going to cause me to do actions to enact changes in my life. But what we really want is you to just start doing things, just start throwing, paint at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's going to then cause some inspiration, which is going to then motivate you to continue doing that action. And the really simple point here is just to start simply and then just build from there. I mean, I have this happen at work all the time where I have this insurmountable story that I'm working on. I'm a software developer. And it seems like such a big ordeal, and I'm just staring at the code like I don't even know where to start. But sometimes it's better to just start out simply. Put some breakpoints in, start just running the code, see what happens. Put some debug statements in there. And then make some little adjustments to see how the output changes. And then you make a little bit more adjustments. And then maybe you ask for help. And then maybe they come in and your coworker comes in and they're helping you out with the problem. Okay, now the wheels have started to turn. And the action is causing you to trek towards the solution. And I really like this principle. I forget about this a lot, where sometimes I won't have any motivation to do things a certain day because I'm I just don't feel it. And then sometimes I just kind of force myself towards that little bit of action. And all of a sudden, okay, yeah, I'm starting to feel the momentum. And next thing you know, we're just knee deep in it. And next thing you know, the task is done. And guys, actually, this was a short chapter. I'm going to do it for this chapter of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Next time, we have chapter 8, The Importance of Saying No. There was a very similar concept in The One Thing about saying no. So looking forward to that chapter. Guys, tune in next week. Tune into the podcast too. I'm going to have a new interview clips dropping with a new author this week. And thank you guys so much for listening. My name is Chris. This is Chee-Tash. Take care.